Well, good morning. I'm Jeff Coleman.
And I'm Debra Pinkerton. Welcome to Morning Light.
We're glad you made it this morning. Well, with the threat of American military action hovering over Venezuela and a Russia-Ukraine peace deal in the balance, I'll ask the Morning Light panel about the moral framework for war. When, how, why is war the right or the only answer? Tough question this morning.
Yeah, an important question. But first, here's a preview of what's coming up later in the show. We have featured Hope Walks several times on Morning Light. The nonprofit based right here in central Pennsylvania corrects clubfoot in 14 countries, including Ethiopia. A new study finds there are efforts that are working there. Plus, learn how you can use your painting skills to help those with untreated clubfoot this Christmas season.
Makes Christmas a little more meaningful and a huge lifelong difference.
That is right.
For a child. Well, following World War II, Congress rebranded the Department of War as Department of Defense to unify the military branches, to cut costs, and to reflect global fatigue after two long world wars. Then came the Cold War in Korea and Vietnam and Iraq and Afghanistan, and a host of smaller military conflicts. Today, its original name, Department of War, is back, along with big questions about when, where, why, or how should America's military be deployed. And I don't think often we're asking these very difficult questions.
That is true. Well, we do know that the scriptures say, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." Jesus commands Christians to love and forgive their enemies. Now, in the 4th and 5th centuries, it was Augustine who introduced the idea of a just war. And that's really the framework for when war is morally justified.
Yeah, that is a debate we are not having right now, but we should be having, because under this just war framework, there should be 3 conditions present. Right intention, a just cause, and the country declaring war must have legitimate authority. A government might also justify war to maintain peace, to punish evildoers, according to Augustine. But are the war planners asking these questions before we support or condemn war or military actions, not just here in America, but wherever war is declared in the world? To kick off this conversation, we go to retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel and JAG officer Davis Younts. He joins us live from his new office in Fountain in South Carolina. Good morning, Davis. Good to have you here.
Good morning. Thank
well,
you.
Look, as a former Air Force JAG officer, you've had to be an expert in both the civilian and military law areas. When it comes to what is legal or ethical, that framework for military conduct, what is the root system? Where do the ideas of what is right or wrong, where do they come from in the military?
They actually have a biblical basis. I mean, we can look to Romans 13 and we can understand that the proper role of government is to protect the innocent and punish the evildoer. And when we look at the United States, the history of the United States, and even throughout Europe and the framework that Augustine was working from, there really is a biblical framework. There's biblical guidance that should be informing and really guiding what we do and how we conduct war. And you can see that as a JAG, someone who served, who deployed to the Middle East, when I was briefing our forces on the law of armed conflict and the rules that the United States follows, they really are based and founded in biblical principles.
So what is the difference, if you take a country that is not rooted in Christian principles, the difference between, say, a Vladimir Putin's justification for war and what Americans with that biblical, at least history, consider a just war? What exactly is a just war?
So that really is the problem we have to wrestle with, and it really is where we should spend our time when we think about war. We should be extremely hesitant to go to war, and we really should ensure we have a just cause. And that really goes back to that principle. Are we engaging in war as a last resort to protect the innocent and punish evildoers? And for a nation, that starts with the responsibility to protect their own people. When we look at a leader like Vladimir Putin, we look at Russia, that's not a Christian country. They're informed by secular humanism, by communism, but even they would try to come up with a justification that would be palpable, whether it's natural law, because we're all created in the image of God, or otherwise. They would try to justify their actions, but they are conquerors. And so I think there is legitimate criticism there that they are attempting to expand their territory and conquer. Now, they would say they have legitimate reasons to do it, which is fascinating, tells us a lot about world history and just the importance of a creator God, because even Russia would try to justify what they're doing based on just war principles.
So that's interesting, because you raise a point, which is that often the moral framework for war comes from church, comes from at least some kind of spiritually rooted system of morality. Russia, of course, has gone to the Russian Orthodox Church. Putin, lighting candles, using the framework of leadership in the Russian church to justify his war. Get practical as an American citizen, but I guess for us, for believers, Christians, citizens also of heaven, what is the checklist that we should be asking whenever we hear a hint, a rumor, as Scripture said, of war? When we look at the actions that we are considering in Venezuela, when we look at intervening perhaps in an African country or Asia, there are always hints, a deployment of a carrier group, troops on the ground. What's the checklist we should be asking?
So, in the real world, practically, that can be very difficult. But what we should be looking at is simple things, and the principles Augustine talked about, but is what we're doing in the best interests of the people of our nation. In other words, is it furthering our government's primary responsibility, which is to protect American citizens, to protect innocent Americans? So is it in our national defense interest from a self-defense standpoint? That really should be the question before we even get started. But the second piece, and this is what we miss, and we missed it again and again, really since World War II, is what is the desired end state? What is the outcome goal? If we're going to engage in war, if we're going to engage in the taking of human life in order to defend our own nation, to defend our people, to protect the innocent, what is the desired outcome? And do we have a path to achieving that? That is one of the things that Augustine talked about that we miss, which is, will war achieve the desired outcome? So what we should be doing as American citizens and as Christians is asking, is there a just cause? Will this protect innocent American lives? Will this protect the American people? That's the obligation of the American government, one. And two, what is the end state? Are our political leaders communicating to us what the desired end state goal is? And I think if we had a criticism of United States foreign policy since World War II, we have done a poor job of articulating the desired outcome.
Asking the right questions and beginning with the end in mind. Davis, thank you. Great to see you again. I appreciate your insight this morning. Well, we now turn to our Morning Light panel for a little more insight. Pastor Joe Green, Alex Coleman, and Cynthia Lyons. Glad to have you all back. Joe, I'll begin with you as a veteran. Is it difficult sometimes when you're on deployment, when you're on a ship, when you're in a foreign country, to find the rationale or the reason why you're doing this? Is there ever a time when you look at your bunkmate, you're on deck somewhere, and you say, what are we doing here?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as a human being, we're always going to have those questions, especially when we take war out of just the geopolitical sphere and look at it from a human perspective. There's human beings on both sides. And so even though you may think, as we talked about, a just war, you still will also look at the fact that there are people on the other side. And usually the people making decisions to go to war or not to go to war aren't the ones on the front line. And so how do we, like you said, how do we in our mind justify or make peace with the fact that although we are, in a conflict or a battle, that we're doing it for the right cause.
That's so interesting because you think about the generals making decision and they're wrestling with these issues, but at the other end, at the bottom, at the other end of the chain of command, there are people that have to tell their families why they're doing what they're doing.
Absolutely.
How do you, in moments like this, say, hey, tap the brakes a little bit before we hit go, before the Situation Room happens and President makes a call, Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman makes the call. How do you tap the brakes in the right way without being unpatriotic, but at the same time saying, wait a second, there's some questions we don't have answers for first, Mr. President, Congress, whoever's involved?
Well, as someone in ministry, I tend to want to look at the heart first and recognize that, we have leaders and bureaucrats making decisions on behalf of the country, but ultimately they're reading the political landscape and doing what they think will be supported, what they think is feasible. So I want to look at the hearts of people in my congregation. I want to look into my own heart and see, is there this sort of biblical patriotism, national pride, or is there sort of this jingoistic, we're going to do what we want to do, foreign adventurism? And one of those things I think is biblically defensible. The other one isn't. I think we've gone through cycles, even in the past few decades of being very desirous for foreign entanglements and wars overseas, to you're seeing a lot of reaction against that now. And I think that Scripture needs to be our North Star, whether or not we should be out there looking for conflicts, including ones that are debatable as far as whether or not they meet those just war criteria that you talked about from Augustine, or if we're called to do something in defense of the innocent somewhere on the world stage.
Wow, that is, and you hear people working, or in leadership, working out those questions, but not really always resolving those questions. When you're dealing with young people in school settings, you're dealing with people who are coming in a public school setting directly from the war front. How do you help them interpret events and how we make decisions here in America, and why our thinking and our framework may be different from, say, a Vladimir Putin?
Sure. Well, I mean, the difficult part in all of that is so many that are coming, and then when I get them in middle and high school, they don't speak the language. So our first step is kind of the integration into what our society looks like, and dealing with the ramifications of what they've seen and what they've been a part of in their war-torn countries. So, you know, we talk about when they walk into a lunchroom and go, I can have more than a banana. Yes, this is what your lunch looks like. This is how it happens. Let's walk through the line. So really, our job as far as dealing with some of the younger people, the children of families that may actually be involved in the actual wars, are coming to us, losing family members, et cetera, et cetera. We're dealing with the trauma of what has happened in their own countries.
That is fascinating. My wife was FaceTiming with family friends of people who were in Afghanistan and who have lost family members to the Taliban. And you realize war is here on our front doors. Look, I wish this was a 2-hour conversation, and we're going to come back to it. So thank you for participating this morning. Very, very helpful. Just war, jingoistic, the word of the day. Thank you. Look that one up. Well, thank you to our Morning Light panel for joining us today. Coming up on Morning Light, Walking Free. Hope Walks allows children to experience life without disability from a common birth defect, clubfoot. The results of a new study find their efforts are working in one African country. You're watching Morning Light right here on Lighthouse TV.
Welcome back. Children born with clubfoot in low-income countries face devastating lifelong consequences if left untreated. Hope Walks, based right here in central Pennsylvania, is transforming lives not only physically, but also spiritually. A new study shows their efforts are working. Joining me is the president of Hope Walks, Scott Reichenbach. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks.
Here in front of us are all of the braces that are making some significant changes in people's lives. Let's talk about the study in Ethiopia.
Yeah. So a few years ago, I read the book called The Shrewd Samaritan by an economist from the University of San Francisco, a Christian economist who was looking at the economic impact and how, as Christians, we can be shrewd Samaritans, and what do we invest in our Christian church overseas, and how really does it make an impact? And so we joined together. He enlisted some help from the University of Notre Dame and some researchers to look at human flourishing and in relation to clubfoot work that we do.
Yeah, that's an amazing thought to go through this process. Yeah. So tell us about what was the focus?
Yeah, so we pulled together 564 kids born with clubfoot in Ethiopia that all had an older sibling. And so he used the older sibling as the counterfactual, and we looked at human flourishing across 5 areas, from physical mobility, social inclusion, mental health, education, and faith. And just looked at these kids who were born, some all born with clubfoot, but some never treated, some treated by Hope Walks with the early intervention, early casting and treatment, and then some kids that weren't treated until later as teenagers with major surgical correction. And he looked at then what was the impact and which intervention had what kind of impact on these kids and their futures.
And what were the results?
Yeah, the results are amazing. I mean, as we know, right, if you're born with clubfoot, you face significant lifelong challenges of disability and education. But with early treatment, like we do at Hope Walks, with early casting, no surgery, just simple 2 months to feed her straight with simple casting, it transforms a child's life and it brings them almost all the way back up to where their older siblings were, as far as social inclusion, as far as their access to health, as far as obviously their mobility, their engagement in a local church and engagement in community. Early clubfoot treatment transforms the lives of these kids and their families.
It's just so hard to believe that here in the United States, it's corrected immediately. There's no delay, but it's happening like this all across the world where it's not, and it's whether it's going to be treated or not, but it definitely affects the outcome.
Yeah. Sadly, 80% of kids born with clubfoot in the developing world don't access care in a timely manner. And so we used to think, well, we've got time. But this study really demonstrated how imperative it is that we find these kids early, that we treat them right after birth, eliminate that disability, that shame that the mom feels. In Africa, the developing world, there's a lot of shame and stigma by having a child born with a disability that impacts and permeates the entire family and even the community. And so by raising awareness, by getting in and finding these kids and treating them quickly, within 2 months, their feet are straight. They'll walk and run and play like other kids. It transforms their lives, their families' lives, their community lives, and most importantly for us, provides an amazing opportunity to share the gospel. You know, Jesus healed. Why was this man born blind? Who sinned? And we get to share that with these families. Why was your child born with clubfoot? You know, we believe it's so that we can share the gospel with these families. And for $40 a month, $500, it transforms their futures, as this study showed.
Wow, and how do you see lives transformed?
Yeah, well, you see it in so many ways. I was just in Kenya 2 months ago, and I had a mom show up with her 16-year-old daughter who was treated in our program 16 years ago.
Wow.
Mom was overjoyed with the transformation. And I asked Mom, I said, what did your family say when your daughter was born with clubfoot? She looked at me and she said, we said she was useless to us.
Wow.
So you talk about transformation. Like here's today, a beautiful 16-year-old girl, straight feet. She wants to be a doctor when she grows up. But when she was born, the first thought of that family was she is useless to us. Thankfully, the mom didn't listen to those voices, but she came and she found our clubfoot clinic, straight feet. The girl doesn't remember anything. She remembers the braces is all she remembers. But now she's in school. She's walking, running, playing. She's playing soccer. And so you talk about transformation. I mean, it's transformed her life and will, Lord willing, transform generations as she becomes a doctor and now turns around and heals other kids there in Kenya, or other adults.
Yeah, that's a wonderful story.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing this with us, Scott.
Thanks for having us.
And coming up on Morning Light, instead of gifting the same old presents this Christmas, you can give the gift of walking. Hope Walks has unique stocking stuffers. That's next. In our last segment, you heard about a new study that shows how the early treatment of clubfoot that Hope Walks offers is improving lives and spreading the gospel at the same time. And you can help give the gift of walking to a child in need this Christmas season. Joining me is Jen Boyd, Communications Project Coordinator. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
And Jeff, you're here to help paint. And,
Expert painter.
Yes,
Thanks for being
we did this last year and had a great time. So how does this work?
Yeah, well, stocking stuffers are that unique gift that you can give to your friends or family or colleague who are impossible to buy for. You can give them the gift of creativity, and you give a child the gift of hope. So you go on our website at hopewalks.org/stocking. You order your stocking stuffers, then you give them out to your friends and family.
Am I allowed to start?
You
We
are.
can start.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then they'll get this kit, and attached to it is a QR code. They'll scan this and fill out the online form, and that links their email address to this specific pair of brace leathers. Then they'll get 3 paint pens in the kit, and they'll get braces for the left and the right foot, and then they can paint them. They'll send them back to us, and then in a few months, we're going to send these to Ethiopia. They'll get a picture of their completed brace once it's done via email, so it'll come back and it'll look like this. And then if we get permission from the parents of the child, we'll send a picture of the child who receives the brace. We can't promise that one, because not all parents are comfortable with it, but we do ask and we do try. So it's a full circle gift that keeps on giving. It gives children really that gift of walking while you give the gift of creativity to your family and friends.
Deborah, please stay in the lines and color carefully.
I know last year we were not able to finish it, so I'm going to try and get this done. So what has the response been?
Yeah, the response has been great. So far, we've had about 450 stocking stuffers ordered. Our goal this year for brace painting kits is 7,500.
Oh, you need a few more.
Just a few more, yes. But don't worry, our fiscal year ends in June, so this isn't by this month, December. But we're trying to get as many as possible painted. We treated more than 18,000 children last year, and not every child gets a painted brace. We have maybe a few at each clinic, and so some kids leave with painted ones, and some kids leave without them. So we're trying to get as many painted as possible. Throughout the year, people can have brace painting events with their family, with their small group, with their churches or their organizations. And so we've had any of them order from 2 to, we just had an order last week come in for 800. You just go to our website and you fill out the form, and we'll send them to you by the time of your event. And so all year long you can paint braces. But this is just a unique way to bless your family this Christmas. So whether it's stocking stuffers or brace painting events, anything helps us get closer to that goal of 7,500 this year.
As Deborah says, it's not the same old gift.
No. Right.
No more ties, Dad.
No, or socks.
Socks.
Yes. No, and it's something fun to do with a group of, family, with friends, just, do it over
fellowship.
What
At
colors
the
did you
same
pick?
time.
Right.
What colors did you pick over there?
Oh, I have the color of my jacket, white, and then blue. How about you?
Just don't get it on your jacket. I'm going
I have wet wipes with me, don't worry.
red and white. I thought was appropriate, for the season. I've stayed in the lines, generally speaking, so far.
You're doing great.
Outlines, little red on the inside, and I think I might leave the black intact.
And that's just it. You don't have to be Picasso. I mean, you can go very creative, or you can do polka dots. The kids just like the colors. It makes them want to wear them. The mothers say if they're painted, it will help them want to wear them. Because if they don't wear these braces after their casts, then their feet will relapse, and they'll go back into disability.
Oh, really?
Yes. So these are an important factor to keep their feet.
I know you said it, but how long is the average time they have to wear it?
So they will wear the braces until they're 5. They'll wear them overnight while they sleep. And so every child will go between 6 to 12 braces, depending on how fast their feet grow by the time they're done with their treatment. Yeah.
Wow.
And I guess, what is the reaction? I mean, the kids are young when they are receiving these, but
Yes.
When they see them, what is the reaction?
So when I was in Kenya last year, we went and did a home visit, and there was a little baby. His name was Comfort. Super cute. And he was a few months old, but he would sit there and he would trace the designs with his finger. And then when we went to the clinic, some of the older kids who were already running around, which is so fun to see, or dancing. There was this little girl named Joy, and she was dancing. But they hold their brace, and they literally run around with their brace, and they'll say, these are my shoes. They're super proud of them. Because the reality is, these kids, as Scott has said, are told that they're useless or they're discarded, right? But then they get this brace that somebody hand-painted for them.
Right.
And it makes them feel special. And then the other kids are like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And they go from being, outcasts to seen as having something valuable
Just
and
the
cool.
dignity of having.
Yeah.
And knowing that somebody thought about you to paint these. And so I always encourage our painters to pray over them too as they're painting, because their prayers are the foundation to the steps the child will soon take.
Well, there's even a year, a date.
Yep, that's the date that the brace is made. And then, as I said, this QR code attached to the bag actually has a matching brace number to the one that's on the tongue.
I see.
And that's how we link it to the email addresses so that people can get their follow-up pictures.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Nice job.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you so much, Jem, for
Yeah.
being with us.
And people can donate. It's $20 a brace painting kit to donate, and that covers the cost of the brace. But
Okay.
every kid, will wear a lot. So you can also donate as well. And we have a matching donor right now. So
Great.
that's awesome.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
And as Jed said, if you would like to purchase a stocking stuffer or to learn more about Hope Walks, check out hopewalks.org. Stay with us. We're back right after the break. Welcome back. Coming up tomorrow on Morning Light, have you heard the word Malandala? It's a term used in Uganda that means root, foundation, the beginning of something. Learn how the Pennsylvania-based ministry Malandala Community Missions is working to advance the physical and spiritual wellness of those serving in Uganda. And that's a look at what's coming up tomorrow on Morning Light. Now, Jeff, your closing thoughts.
Miss a day, you miss a lot here in Morning Light. Well, Evelyn Merchant was a Midwest girl from Independence, Missouri, before becoming a Hollywood star, adopting several screen names, including Harleen Wood and Jill Jackson Miller. Then came a failed marriage, followed by depression, eventually a suicide attempt. When she reached rock bottom, it was there she realized that God never left her, that he loved her unconditionally. In her state of helplessness, Jill said she learned why she was created. She was created with a purpose. Her life, no matter how much success she had or how many failures she had deep meaning. In 1955, she wrote a song about her newfound peace with God, and this Christmas, you're probably going to hear it sung by a choir at least once or twice. Let there be peace on earth, the lyrics say, and let it begin with me. That was Jill's cry that year. Wars are often started by people with a battle on the inside. If we want to see those wars end and peace return, the first step is ending the battle within, finding peace with God. For Debra and the entire Morning Light team, I'm Jeff Coleman. Thanks for making time to be with us today. Now go check on your neighbors. Let's meet back here again tomorrow morning.